Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Compliance Week TV. I'm Matt Kelly, editor of Compliance Week, and Compliance Week TV is our occasional series of short videos where we talk about issues of the day in corporate compliance with various newsmakers or leading thinkers in the field, with the objective of helping you understand how you can manage your corporate compliance department more effectively. Today we're going to talk about one of the enduring challenges for corporate compliance departments, and that would be bribery of foreign government officials. Now, here in the United States, for the better part of a decade, companies have faced a fierce crackdown on bribery of foreign government officials, and that would be thanks to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Last year, the situation got more complicated. Britain passed its own, even tougher anti-corruption law called the Bribery Act, and that is slated to go into effect later on this year. Like the FCPA, the Bribery Act does outlaw payments to foreign government officials, but that then goes further in several key respects. For example, it bans commercial bribery, where a company might bribe another company for a piece of business. It criminalizes failure to prevent a bribe, which has a lot of compliance officers worried about how effective their anti-corruption programs are. And then finally, it also bans facilitation payments, which are allowed under the FCPA, even though they are generally not allowed in the country where the payment is being made. Now, this is all a very confusing situation, and it has a lot of U.S. corporations wondering if they can somehow leverage their experience with the FCPA into more effective compliance with the Bribery Act, or even do you want to make the Bribery Act the cornerstone of your anti-corruption program across the board? So joining us today to talk about these questions is Howard Sklar. Howard is former anti-corruption counsel at Hewlett-Packard, and he is currently senior counsel at Recommind. They are a software vendor that works in e-discovery and internal investigations and other issues that might arise from a bribery problem. So Howard, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, Matt.
So first question then, this whole idea of making the Bribery Act the fixed star around which you build your anti-corruption program. How sensible is that right now? How much does it or does it not overlap with the FCPA that it makes sense to give it a try this way?
So I think that using the Bribery Act as the fixed star for your anti-corruption compliance program is probably a little premature. I think we want to wait and see first when it comes into effect, it's just delayed again, and then how they enforce it. Compliance programs really can't afford to control against theoretical risk. We need actual risk. So if the UK comes through with a strong enforcement program, I think that what'll end up happening is we'll see not just the UK but other countries pass their own anti-corruption laws, ever more restrictive. And I think we might end up with a situation similar to in privacy with data breach notifications, where right now the Massachusetts law is the most restrictive, and pretty much every company in the United States structures their data breach program around the Massachusetts law. And I think that's what you'll find in the area of anti-corruption. So we'll see how the UK Bribery Act comes into effect. Certainly right now you have a strong base with FCPA compliance programs. The companies certainly have a lot of experience with that and know how to do that. So whether or not they switch to the UK Bribery Act, I think will depend mostly on how the UK enforces it, and then how other countries take a lesson from that and pass their own legislation and how restrictive that is.
Okay. So then let's talk about the risk assessment, because step one for any new compliance effort is to assess what your risks are. I'm curious how a risk assessment for the Bribery Act may or may not upend what you've already been doing for risk assessments around the FCPA, which for most U.S. companies by now, that risk assessment should be fairly routine.
So I think that certainly risk assessment is step one. I think from a process perspective, companies have been doing risk assessments, for better or worse, for a long time. So the process, I think, will look somewhat the same. The results, on the other hand, I think will look wildly different, mainly because of the UK Bribery Act's prohibition on commercial bribery. That will change really how businesses interact with their customers, their suppliers, their distributors globally. So I think that from a process perspective, it'll be somewhat similar. The results, it's going to be, certainly FCPA right now is in usually a very high-risk quadrant. I think the UK Bribery Act prohibitions are going to push that even to up and to the right, so to speak, on a risk assessment. and we'll see even higher risk coming from that, simply because this will change how companies interact with all of their customers and suppliers in a way that the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act doesn't. I mean, that's limited to foreign government officials. And you can go into a room and you can say, well, I'm only dealing here with government officials and how we interact with government officials. Mm-hmm. Whereas for the UK bribery bill, it's everybody.
So lastly, let's talk about the IT systems and how they may intersect with these efforts. And will the Bribery Act make you look for and collect different types of information, which may therefore affect the tools you're going to use to go out and collect it? What is this going to look like?
So I think the basic problem with IT integration into compliance is that IT isn't integrated into compliance. The business generally sees compliance as a cost center mm-hmm. and not as a partner. And compliance sees IT as a service vendor and not as a partner. And I think in order to successfully integrate IT, you need all three of those units working together in a partnership. So you need to basically introduce your compliance people to your IT people. Mm-hmm. The problem is that you're probably collecting what information you need already. You're going to see a convergence of IT and information governance where you have your anti-money laundering compliance, your M&A compliance, and your anti-corruption compliance, all of which collect roughly the same information, all converged into an information governance process. Mm-hmm. Generally, the problem is not what you collect. The problem is that you don't know that you're collecting it. So you're going to need, and thankfully there's more sophisticated technology today that you can know so that the left hand does know what the right hand is doing.
Sure.
You're collecting the information already, you just have to know it. And knowing where your information is, how it's collected, where it's collected, really is a combination between the business, IT, and compliance. So I think that what you'll see in the future is a merging of those three functions so that you can really effectively integrate IT into your compliance program.
Okay. Well, Howard, that is all the time we have, but you covered plenty of ground for us, so thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Once again, everybody, that was Howard Sklar, Senior Counsel at Recommind. They are a software vendor that works in e-discovery and internal investigations. We thank him for his time, and we thank Recommind in particular for sponsoring this episode of Compliance Week TV. That is all for this episode. I'm Matt Kelly, editor of Compliance Week. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join us again next time.